3rd and 5. Carr, pressured, escapes a sack at first, but not the second time. Justin Houston, the first guy in there.
The weak link is this offensive line, Austin Howard. And I was told by the Raiders.
3rd down and 4. Only a 2-man rush that time, and the pass is low and incomplete.
Get into this drop back mode, and that's not healthy either.
John Feliciano is the guy who takes his spot. This time Carr has some time, but the coverage is great. Ball to the 28-yard line. Their best drive of the night, and Carr is going to go for it all and too deep. Richard cutting down the sideline. He had Marcus Peters. And the pass is high, and it's caught, but no gain there. The left side. Carr looks that way. Carr goes that way, and that's incomplete. Intended for Roberts. So the Kansas City defense. And they start this drive from the 18-yard line. And that's Roberts going in motion. So you've got 4 receivers on the right side going for the end zone. And you got action and contact, but no flag. And Carr throws, and that pass is behind. 4-man rush. And it's a short pass, and it's incomplete. So that defense, a little over 6 to play in the quarter. Carr flings it to the outside. A little over 3 yards per pass attempt. Wow. And fires incomplete here. Intended for Crabtree.
But anytime you float this ball this far over a receiver's head, it just makes you think. I think Crabtree thought he was throwing it to somebody else. Like he pulled his hands down.
Carr under pressure, gets away, going deep downfield and incomplete over the head of Amari Cooper. Turning around, couldn't collect it. 4th down.
And once again, Derek Carr just cannot connect on this thing. This is going to be a walk-in, and I don't know what happened to Cooper. He looked like he lost his balance or something on this throw and just sort of stumbled at the tail end of it.
And Carr gets hit as he throws, and that's Justin Houston who came in and hit his arm. Sets up a 4th and 4. 4-man rush down the left sideline.
No, I do not. I do not feel like they got exposed because I'm going to take a few things into consideration. Clearly, Derek Carr didn't have the best game. It didn't help that Amari Cooper, Crabtree, and the rest of the crew couldn't get open against Peters, Berry, and the Kansas City Chiefs secondary. Major props to Kansas City's defense. They're 20-3 in their last 23 games with a 197-point differential. They have been absolutely sensational. Andy Reid is doing a phenomenal job. But the reason why I'm going to say that the Raiders weren't necessarily exposed, it's going to sound like an excuse. I concede that because this is football and there are conditions that people definitely have to live with. But damn it, it matters. We're human beings. We've got blood sifting through our veins. We're not robots. These kind of things happen. It has a negative effect on you. I'm talking about that freezing temperature, that cold weather. About 20 degrees last night. Lord knows how it felt with that wind chill factor. It was cold out there. It certainly, even though it gets cold in Northern California, not to this degree as far as I'm concerned. There were inclement weather, I believe, played a role. I believe it sort of threw off the Oakland Raiders and their high-powered offense a little bit. There was a 3-turnover differential for crying out loud. Kansas City uncharacteristically turned over the football. The Oakland Raiders offense that I know and love would have taken better advantage of that had the conditions been better, although they were held to 10 points early in the season against Kansas City. That is beside the point. I think they would have showed up better last night. I think they would have performed better had it not been for those freezing temperatures, which I clearly did not take into consideration before predicting the outcome of this game. I'm going to give the Raiders a mulligan here because I don't believe that Crabtree and Cooper and all of these boys would have had receiving yards in the 20s. I don't believe that Derek Carr would throw for just 117 yards. I don't care what secondary you're going against. I'm going to give the Raiders somewhat of a pass on this because I think inclement weather compromised their performance, Max. That's what I believe.
The Raiders got exposed. They got exposed as legit as did the Chiefs. Those are two legit teams, and neither one of them as good as the Patriots, and anyone who watched that game last night knows that. The Raiders are legit because on the road, in a very tough place to play, Arrowhead, maybe the toughest in the NFL, in bad weather, in a hostile environment, game came down to the wire. So the Raiders are real. I thought they would lose that game. The Chiefs were favored to win. The Chiefs beat them earlier in the season. And so the Raiders doing that, having that game come down to the wire when the defense is doing a number on Derek Carr and all those other factors are in play, and you've won so many games already this year, that kind of loss is the kind of loss you can live with. You're going to lose some games throughout the course of a season. And almost every team ever, more than one. So that's the Raiders. The Chiefs are onto something. Andy Reid, a great coach, has done you look at the 20-3 mark that you referenced, Stephen A., that I was talking about yesterday. What's the key throughout that time? The turnover differential. Everything else cancels. Everything else in football is noise. It's not that your offensive line, the other team's secondary, the running game, all those kind of things aren't significant. They are significant. But if you have a +2 turnover differential, you're going to win more than 2/3 of the time. That's the determining factor. And generally, a team with a high turnover differential, like the Chiefs, you say, well, they're going to regress to the mean, meaning some of that's luck. They got to come back to the pack a little bit, and when they do, they'll start to lose. But I don't think it is luck with the Chiefs. They're leading the league in picks over that time. They're also leading the league in lowest opponent's QBR over that time. That's just a really good Andy Reid defense. So, were the Raiders exposed against them in that environment, having the game come down to the wire where all these things are going right for the Chiefs? No, they weren't. The Raiders are legit. And what about the Chiefs? They're legit. But we saw what we saw last night. Neither one of them is as good as the New England Patriots right now.
I had a completely different take on last night, but I was coming from a different place you guys are coming from, because I picked the Raiders to win the West, to win last night. So I was rooting for the Raiders against all odds as the prohibitive underdog at Arrowhead. And I got to tell you, in all my years of watching football, that was as frustrating a game as I have ever watched from start to finish, because I couldn't recognize Derek Carr. And I get, it could be, I don't know what it was, but it looked like because of his wounded pinky finger, he could not grip the football. Because, listen, he's got a gun. We know that. We know that. I saw him with his dislocated pinky finger in Oakland. Again, it gets a little cool at night, but not like that, not 13-degree wind chill.
No.
I saw him after he dislocated, he came back against Carolina and threw the heck out of the ball. And against Buffalo, he's throwing rockets all afternoon. I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty impressive. Last night, he had little to no velocity. Have you ever seen so many lob floaters? Everything was lob floater.
It appeared like wind was a factor when it wasn't a factor.
It wasn't a factor.
Right.
Because everybody wrote
but
there
Alex
appeared no wind.
Smith's ball, I mean, his throws didn't seem like they had any problem with it at all. He was
not at all.
The ball. He threw the ball effectively.
So everything is float, float, float. And he was throwing changeup to his receivers to the point that it looked like the receivers were a little out of sync, like the ball was coming so much slower than usual that you're a half step ahead, and the ball's coming so softly that you're not ready. Plus, as you said, they all dress. Whenever you see a bunch of receivers dressed like the Michelin Man, like you say, with all this stuff up around your neck, then they're giving in to the cold. And I'm sure it was cold. I'm sure it was cold. Miserably cold. And this is a quote-unquote warm weather team, but they gave into it right away, because the ball, when it did touch hands, would touch frozen hands of stone. That's what it looked like to me, right? Because I counted 9 drops in the game. That's unofficial, but Seth Roberts couldn't catch anything.
Right.
Seth Roberts had a ball in the corner of the end zone, and he goes up for it, and it's a lob floater, but he gets the ball in his hands, and he juggles it for just a second until the DB gets there and knocks it out of his hands. If you go up and snatch it and clutch it, you're going to score. And then finally, the crescendo of the night to me, when the Raiders are still hanging in, because Kansas City just fell apart in the second half. They had 104 yards.
Andy Reid got really, really conservative
He did. He had a 4-corner offense.
Okay? They made 4 first downs and 100 yards in the second half. Amari Cooper finally gets behind the DB, and for once, Derek Carr beats the rush, steps up, stops, and throws a big lob floater, but it's a touchdown. And I don't know what happened. I think he lost it. Look at this. He loses it in the lights.
Yeah.
Didn't he? Like,
It looked like
what are you doing?
Like the wind affected it, but there
was no wind.
There was no wind, and so
some people speculated that it hit a TV cable. I've never seen that happen. They're not that low.
The TV cables aren't that. Trust me, if it hit a TV cable,
if you threw the ball that high,
I mean,
it would come straight down.
First of all, the safety blew it. Yeah. They're playing 22 man. He comes down and cover one robber. He playing lurk coverage, so he blew that coverage, and that's why Peterson is looking back at it like, man, what are you doing? Yeah. Why are you robbing a shallow cross when we're playing two man? You're supposed to split, and so that should have been an interception. First of all, if you play in the coverage, that they call on the field.
But against that guy, it should be a touchdown because that guy can fly.
I'm looking at the Raiders' offense is like a Ferrari in Minnesota. You can only bring it out in certain conditions, and if the conditions aren't ideal, it's not functional. This offense. And the way they throw the football, when they go to cold weather, they're going to struggle because everything is really predicated. They can run the football okay, but everything is really predicated on them pushing the ball down the field, getting big plays. Right. If they don't get big plays, they're very mediocre.
Well, that's who they are.
Here's Carr after the game.
It was definitely a bad night. There's no getting around that. I hate to have the bad night come on this one, right? Out of all the games that we've had, but. Obviously we didn't do enough. We all took turns, I feel very responsible for that because as the leader of the offense and the team, I feel sick to my stomach, when we put something like that out there on film, and it hurts. I can promise you that. I put too much time into this to go and do something like that.
Max, did last night's game with affect Carr's chances of winning the MVP?
It affected them. I mean, it's not over. It's Dak's to lose, but I thought that before the game. I think Dak's had a better season than Derek Carr. And for those who talk about Dak's offensive line and also the presence of Ezekiel Elliott, I can point to the offensive line on the Raiders and the presence of some excellent receiver. I mean, just an excellent receiving core, arguably the best in the league. So I already thought Dak was the front runner. But now I think there should be a consensus that it's his to lose. And please, with the Tom Brady stuff, Dak Prescott has a higher QBR than Tom Brady, period, and Tom Brady's missed 4 games. That's a ridiculous argument. But Derek Carr could still win it. Like, let's see what happens with Dak the rest of the way. He is a rookie quarterback. Last night was it's not that it somehow diminishes Derek Carr's season. I still felt like the Raiders were dangerous late in that game, and they were. Because of the presence of Derek Carr. He's a special talent, having a special year. But when you start talking MVP, you got to split hairs. And right now, it's Dak's to lose.
Couple of things. I really want Max Kellerman to stop being so disrespectful to Tom Brady, who basically has a rating of 113, a QBR of 89. He's got 19 touchdowns, just 1 interception, and is completing nearly 69% of his passes. Let's not act like, oh my goodness, he doesn't belong in the conversation. That's just disrespectful to arguably the greatest quarterback of this generation. Zip it. Stop it. Stop doing that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, when we get to Derek Carr, let's be clear about something here. The race is not over, but he looks bad right now. And here's why he looks bad. Because of what he's done the last 2 games. He completed 54% of his passes, and that comeback went over Buffalo. Last night obviously was an awful night, as he admitted. He does have 3 games left. One's against Andrew Luck. All right, first it's against Phillip Rivers. Then it's against Andrew Luck. Then it's against that Denver defense. He shows up and plays big time in those last 3 games. And Oakland wins all 3 games. Then you're talking about a dude that's going to have 13 wins on the season. I don't think you can ignore that. So it's not over by any stretch. But the fact is that he's going to have to show up in an elite fashion in order to capture league MVP honors. It's not because of last night. It's because of the last 2 games combined with the 3 games to go and the way the other guys in the league competing with him for that MVP trophy have been playing.
Let me ask you something. I agree that the team's record helps or hurts, has an effect on MVP chances. If he wins 13 games, and I don't know that he will, but let's say he did.
I think he'll win 12.
Be more or fewer? Okay, 12. Is that going to be more or fewer than Dak likely?
Brian Billick, NFL Network, on the Raiders. The fact that Carr, at least for now, has to play out of the shotgun, and they were running a lot of pistol last night, how does that limit their run game? And does Bob Sutton or do other D coordinators, is it easier for them to shut down the run game if they know Carr is always in the shotgun?
Well, the fact that you're not going to have the versatility. Now, they ran the ball pretty well. They had 135 yards rushing. So it's not like they got shut down in the running game. If you'd have looked at this score, you'd have just the score, you'd have guessed that, Oakland maybe turned the ball over, didn't run the ball real well, and because it was still a tight enough score. So this game was kind of contrary to what you'd look at with the score, in that, like I said, Kansas City had big plays. Oakland did not. Oakland did not turn the ball over, and they actually ran the ball, fairly well. They ran the ball a whole lot better than the Chiefs. It was the Chiefs that you got to give Oakland credit. I mean, Chiefs shut down that running game. They only had 27 carries for 65 yards. So the numbers don't add up here, other than the fact that it was Kansas City at home. And, it was a big play, all but in the special teams. That was the difference in the game. So, I don't know that you draw. If I'm Jack Del Rio, hey, we got to make corrections, guys. But we went on the road to a hot Kansas City team, and it was a kickoff return or a punt return that was the difference in the game. We're okay here. So, there's a lot. And the reason I keep coming back to Baltimore and Pittsburgh, not to Kansas City and Oakland can't go on the road and win, say, in a Foxborough, but Baltimore and Pittsburgh have done that and are comfortable with it. That's not going to intimidate them, and maybe that's the wrong term. They're going to be more comfortable going into Foxborough and playing a New England Patriot team. Their pedigree is more suited to that than is Kansas City and Oakland.
The handshake after the game last night, Coach, I don't think it was that big of a deal, but there was this fleeting shot for a half a second on NBC on the rollout last night that it looked like Jack Del Rio was giving Andy Reid some dirty look as Andy patted Jack on the back. I don't think it's anything. However, it got us talking about awkward handshakes.
Well, that's an awkward thing anyway.
Sure it is.
It is, and you tried. I didn't see it, actually, so I don't know that there's any bad blood, or other than, obviously, when you're talking about the rivalry of Oakland and Kansas City, and both these coaches are kind of new to that, although Jack grew up a Raider fan, so there may be a natural inclination to see red, literally, and figuratively.